Dr. Lalita and for your wonderful introductions. Before I start my talk, I would like to thank the Center for South Asian Studies, Christine Koya, and of course Dr. Lalita Dupro for organizing and inviting me to these wonderful institutions. This is my first time here at UW-Madison, and I know that UW-Madison has been the prominent home of sociologists, gender scholar, including South Asian, scholarship. So I'm very, very honored, and I'm very, very excited to be here with you all. Thank you again. So as Dr. Dupron has indicated, my talk will be on Nepali female migrants. The talk will be based on this particular, book. But when I was trying to prepare my talk for 45 minutes, it was, I really had a challenging, moment, because the whole book to be summarized in 40 minutes was very, very challenging. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to highlight the main issues that I discussed in the book, and then of all the major issues and major trends, I'm going to focus on women's narratives. So that is, women's narrative is the central to this book, and I'm going to share their voices and vision with you. I also included their voices and their narratives in my presentations. So I like you to read their own voices. So I'm going to start. I'm going to end it in 45 minutes so that we'll have some room for Q&A. And this is the agenda. I'm going to give a brief introductions, and then I'll briefly show you the main themes. And again, the focus will be on women's narratives, and then I'm going to talk about the conclusion and the take-home messages. One thing that I want to share with you is that, oftentimes my students, they tell me that I speak very fast. If I'm talking very fast, please slow me down. I won't feel offended if you slow me down. So this is the agenda for my presentation today. So starting with the introduction, the research context, subject, and sites. Those who are familiar with migration pattern in Nepal, I'm sure you know that the male migration has very much dominated by male, right? The male in Nepal migrated to serve for the British Gorkhas and the Indian Army and the Indian soldier for a long time. But since 1990s, women actually started to migrate as a head, they became the primary migrants. So that shifted, that sort of altered the gender migration patterns. And I wanted to sort of analyze and explore some of the ramifications and repercussions of the women's migration as a head to the US, the head migrants. And also, as a gender and feminist scholar, I was also very much interested to document the everyday night and everyday lives of women's work, family, and community lives. So those issues, those factors motivated me to, research about the Nepali female migrant who work in informal economic sectors in the US. I don't know if I need this, okay? And so who are the women here? Who are the subject? And I'm going to talk about this, the subject and the sites. So you see that these are the, real participants, and they work. All of them work in the informal economic sectors in Boston and New York, and their age range between 28 and 57, and they were from Boston and the New York, areas. And these women, they came from various socio-economic and demographic, backgrounds. They were from different castes and ethnic group, and they were from various religious, background in Nepal. But almost all of them actually were college educated, and they came from professional background, which was very unique of this study. And these are the main themes in this book, which is gender migrations, informal economic work, and co-ethnic segmented labor market, shifting gender roles and gender relations, and women's agencies, transnationalism, and women's philanthropic activities. And again, I told you earlier that women, the patterns. So what are some of the patterns? I wanted to share you some patterns and the trends. So yes, women migrated alone as a primary migrants or head of their household. And women also subverted the traditional migration pattern and gender pattern, you can say that. And multiple factors. There are many political, economic, social, cultural factors that contributed to women's decision to migrate in the US, and motivations. And also there are many other factors like political, economic, transnational, and cultural factors, which also very much intertwined with the decisions. And this is very, very interesting because all these women, almost all of them, work in the informal economic markets. They work as a childcare providers. They work in the restaurant, restaurant, and they also work in a convenience store. But then most of them work precisely for their Indian, employers. So I talk about the segmented labor market. Within the informal market, there's a ethnically segmented labor market which actually employed women. So the employers, majority of the employers were Indian. Whether they work as a caregivers or whether they work as a childcare providers or whether they work in a restaurant, business, they work for Indian employers. And there are reasons, many reasons for why they worked for Indian employers or why Indian employers shop these women to work for them. And again, the Indian employers were searching for Nepali women to hire as a nanny or childcare providers or domestics, and then the Nepali women they were also looking for Indian employers. So there were some mutual kind of sort of reasons, right? And there were some social, again, cultural factors that actually brought these Indian employers and Nepali women together because of the shared food, shared culture, shared language, shared festivals like in Dasara, Deepavali, and Tees. All those religious and cultural celebrations brought these employer and employees together. And this is one of the research participants, Ava. Ava, she's a 46-year-old childcare provider, came to New York in 2003 to attend the UN conference actually. She came to New York to attend a conference, and then she ended up staying in New York, and there were various reasons why she stayed here. But then this is when I asked her, why she felt comfortable, why she chose to work for an Indian employer, then this is what she said. You can read her own, the voice here. So she felt very much at home when she saw all the, the episode, the video cassettes of Mahabharata and then Ramayana. She felt very much home to have that, the popular culture or surrounded to her. And but there is also religious, engagement, religious, factor here that, brought her to the Indian employers. So yeah, within ethnic labor markets, there were some dualities, there were some paradoxes. Yeah, the employers were, they would consider the Nepali women as their family members. They would, treat them as their mothers and sisters. But there were also unequal labor relations between the employers and the employees. Considering a family member did not liberate women from exploitative labor conditions. So there were dualities and paradoxes in that sense. And even when the boundaries between employer and the employee, actually when that boundary dissolved, then women's workload actually intensified. That was very consistent and throughout women's narratives. So this is Ava, the same childcare provider whose voice I shared with you earlier. So, quote, today when I was about to come here, they gave me a handbag that they bought as a gift for Mother's Day. They are very good to me. My employers own a clinic. They are both doctors. One of them is a neurologist. The other is a pediatrician. They have given me training in the clinic as well. When the clinic is very hectic, I help them by taking temperatures and recording them on code. So, not to mention that she was also requested to cook the food, Nepali or the Indian food, and then she was also asked to teach the, the Hindi language to the kids. So there were that kind of expectations also. And intersectionality, I have also analyzed women's lives from intersectional framework or paradigms. I sort of try to capture their work conditions in relation to their race, class, gender positions in the labor market. So I brought intersectional framework in that sense. But I also brought the whole gender globalizations literature, like in what ways or how do the processes of globalization create the particular kind of work for women. And then definitely I did talk about the transnational activism or transnational ties and transnational engagement later on. That are all of them together. So this is Sama, who is sort of describing her context for women. This is her relationship with her employer. Quote, do you know how much a dollar is? You haven't seen a dollar in Nepal, have you? You came to the United States to earn dollar, right? So you have to work. You have to work have to work on this much money. You have to please us. You have to follow your instructions, and you have to obey us. Otherwise, you won't earn dollars and will remain poor forever. Unquote. So this is how the employer sort of viewed the Nepalis overall. Her identity as a Nepali actually contributed this kind of perceptions, right? So Nepal is very much seen or considered a very poor country, and most of the people who live in Nepal are also considered poor. So all those people who come and migrate to the U.S., they are considered poor. So people, they are here to earn dollar. So that framework, that mindset was also very much applicable to this particular relations between employer and the employee. And then the other main theme of this book is shifting gender roles and gender relations. So what happened when women became the head migrant? What happened when women became the main breadwinner for their families? What happened when women actually controls the the economic resources? So I do talk about the ramification, how that actually altered gender roles, gender relations, both at home, but also much on a broader international scale. So that, when women become the main breadwinner, or when they, became the main primary migrants, and when they supported their family back home or community back home, that also destabilized the gender, traditional gender roles and relations. So I do talk about that, and that has also enhanced women's decision-making power. So definitely women, they subverted the traditional patriarchal norms. And so this is the main thing, transnational solutions and community building. So there are many ways that women participated in transnationalism or transnational activities, right? These are some of the ways that women were so much invested through remittances and financial support for family and non-family members, building Nepali diaspora here in the U.S., and participation in US-based non-profit organizations, and leadership, social network, and activisms. So women were, working here. They were taking full-time, job, and they were definitely helping their family. But what is unique is that they were also helping the non-family members. They were supporting the social organizations back home, but they were also very much, involved and active in the, US-based NGOs like Help Nepal, Nepali Women Global Network. They were very, very, active in that sense. But they also, sort of enacted. They also enacted on their, resources, and also the women's agencies. So now this is the main theme. This is the main focus of this, talk today. So far, I was just giving you some background information about some of the major themes, but I'm going to focus here, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to share some of the quotes, some of the voices of women, which reflects their agencies, their transnational engagement, their transnational community building, and their philanthropic, activities. So this is Pretty. She is a 30-year-old house cleaner. She lives in New York, and she preferred house cleaning jobs to childcare because that gave her more flexibility, according to Preeti. And during our interview, Preeti told me that other Nepali women migrants in community building, she was telling me about how hard these women, work, how hard these Nepali women work. They work for 6-7 days, some of them work for 7 days, and they were definitely supporting their family. But what she said that almost all of these women are, sending money to the social organizations back home, the community back home. And this is one of the quotes that came from Preeti's. Their quote: "Women send their income back home for family and for social causes. I see this person who always wears the same clothes every day. She says that she gives all of her income away to her temple and her family back home. She has 2 children back home, whom she financially supports. I take inspiration from her. She sacrifices personal pleasure for the greater good of the community back home." So in this particular quote, Preeti indicates her friend's cultural investment back home. So she was investing in building monasteries actually back in Kathmandu, this particular friend of hers. And this particular quote of Tara also reflects her civic responsibility. So Tara was a 41-year-old child care provider in New York. She came to the United States to attend a conference and ended up staying for personal, political, and economic reasons. In Nepal, Tara provided a literacy class to adult and older women, and she was also a high school teacher. So when I asked her, why she was so much invested in that literacy, program back home, this is what she, said. I think you can read faster than I read, so I let you read it. Tara actually works six days a week so that she can have enough money to support her children as well as to support her literacy program back home. And this is Kiran. She is the founder of a middle school in Kathmandu. And Kiran is a 43-year-old child care provider. She was actively engaged in transnational practices in New York. So whenever she participated the cultural celebrations, whenever she participated the cultural festival, the festivals, and she always, approached the Nepali community, Nepali people for, fund. And she was actively actually raising funds so that she can have this middle school for the needy and marginalized children back home. And she was very successful in doing so. And this is Priya, who is also a child care provider based in New York. And Priya came to attend her daughter's graduation, actually. Her daughter is a professional, and her daughter wants Priya to be, relax her life. She doesn't want her mom to work that hard, but Priya wants to work. She's working as a nanny, and she's saving all that money to, sponsor the 2 orphanages in Nepal. She also, supports children in India. This is Anita. Anita, this particular quote reflects her leadership and activism. Anita is in her mid-50s, and then she is like the sort of head of that community in terms of providing resources, in terms of pulling resources to the needy community. So everyone knows Anita in the greater Boston area, especially in the care and service sectors work in that particular domain. And she is also involved with the NWG and Nepali Women Global Network. She's also involved with the Help Nepal, and all the time, she's very much actively, engaged in all kind of transnationalism, whether that be collecting money for the needy people in Nepal, or whether that be rebuilding Nepali diaspora. in Boston. Very much engaged. This particular quote actually comes from Anita also, this, which reflects her civic engagement. And she's also the member of Greater Boston Nepali community, and I'll read this quote. Quote, I'm a member of the Greater Boston Nepalese Community Organization, and I'm really involved in that. The organization provides all kinds of help and information to both the immigrant and non-immigrant Nepali community. It organizes social and cultural events for Nepalis. It also collects money and donations for social issues in Nepal. Recently, each of us donated $50 to a public school back in Nepal. I'm also involved in the $1 program. The money we collect primarily goes to needy and poor children back home. And Anita, initially she started to work in the restaurant, but at the time of my interview, she was a child care provider as well. So she had 2 different jobs actually. This is Anita again. When asked, I was so amazed to see that all these women who are working in the informal economic sectors, they were very much concentrated in these low-paying jobs, and they didn't have any day off, and they were just getting the minimum wage, and the labor conditions was not that good, and there was exploitation, all of that. And despite all of that, they were working. All of them were working 6 days and 7 days. And they were sharing that, hardly earned income to not only to their families but also the communities and the social organizations. And I was very amazed. And then I asked, why do women want to share their, income? It's not that they are earning it. Just it's not like they're earning it with a income, the yearly salary, or they have a very good work conditions. That wasn't the case. But even then, they wanted to share, and I was very, very intrigued by that, and this is what she, told me. So it shows the diaspora, the diaspora, and then what happened. Diaspora of the migrant and immigrant community. When you live far away from home, how do you and then your sentiments and your dreams and your the feelings, right? And it captures some of that. I know this is a very smaller font, but still, I hope that you can read it. This is Sama, who was a nurse in Nepal. She was also very well-known social worker. So she came to New Hampshire actually to visit her friends, and then she ended up staying in America for familial reasons and the political reasons also, because her husband asked her to stay here. Her husband asked her to make a home for him and for their children. And she is also building a transnational community here and there, both in the US and also in Nepal. And here I quote, in Nepal, for more than 12 years, I provided my service to the people and the poor community in various capacities. As a social worker and also as a nurse, I provided my services to my neighbors and community. I volunteered at a community health clinic that provided free service for poor people. Then I came here. Since I can't be physically there and provide my services to the people there, I feel more need to support this clinic in whatever capacities I can. I would like to see contributions of this. I like to see contributions of this clinic because its services have become even more important to the local community. Everything has become so expensive in Nepal. Many people struggle for their day-to-day survival. Having access to healthcare service is a luxury for many of these people. This is why I financially support this clinic, and unquote. This is what driving Sama to work in the informal economic sectors also. Of course, she has some familial responsibility, but she comes from relatively well-off family. She doesn't need to work this hard, but the dollar amount that she earns is relatively higher than what she was earning back home. That was also one of the realities. This is Ava, whose course I shared with you earlier. She was the one who came to attend the UN conference, and she was talking about how she felt when she saw the Durga, how when she found out her employer's devotion to Durgas. So when she was very much happy to see that religious kind of bonding with her employers, and who was also given the training to take temperature, to work in the clinic. So this is the same Ava, whose self-confidence has been boosted. Now, quote, "I'm happy to support my family. Living and working in America has increased my confidence. Now I feel that I can go anywhere in the world and work. I'm no longer dependent on anyone. Rather, I have become the central figure of my family. I make most of my major decisions, especially when it involves money. Have also gained respect from my family and community," unquote. So, conclusion, based on whatever I shared with you today, I try to come up with some conclusions, and some of the major themes that I shared with you were very short, and I'll be happy to discuss those themes or any questions you have during our Q&A. But I do have some time for Q&A. But let's talk some of the conclusions or some of the messages or the broader impacts. Here, definitely, I try to bring the intersectional, global, and transnational framework together in analyzing and exploring women's work lives and their family and transnational lives. And then the book, definitely, the work also moves beyond the model of victimization of third world women in the informal labor market. It definitely deconstructs that mean that those who work in the informal economic sectors or those who are migrant workers who work in the domestic and service work are the poor and come from a lower socioeconomic background or are uneducated. That was not true for this group of women. So it deconstructs that need. And I also, the paradoxes and the, contradictions emerge throughout women's work and family lives. And that is also a major theme in the book, contradictions and paradoxes. Whether that be, in the workplace, ethnically segmented labor market, or whether, that be through their shifting, altering gender roles and gender relations. Women experience, exploitations and empowerment simultaneously. That is because of the intersection of their, nationality, in their view, as a Nepali women, and themselves as a women working in the service sector or in the informal sector, in ethnically segmented labor market. All of these intersections of their race, class, gender, cultural background, nationality, citizenship, factor and actually created very interesting dynamic through which they experience exploitations and empowerment simultaneously. And alterations of gender expectations at home and abroad. And women's engagement in transnational activities and activism was very, opulent and visible. So, challenges and accomplishment. Yeah, women encounter poor work conditions. They, encounter labor exploitation. They work, long hours. With low wage, and they were emotionally and psychologically, abused or oppressed. And they, in one particular case, the Nepali women actually was abused of stealing, the silver spoon and silver glass, and that was also there. And but also, that also being away from home and being a transnational wife, being a transnational mother, also disrupted their conjugal lives, their familiar life. Those were the challenges. But there were also accomplishments, which is like their economic contributions, increased social status, enhanced self-confidence, and transnational engagement and global civic citizenship and activism. So those were some of the accomplishments that women sort of achieved. And women challenge patriarchal norms, existing gender barriers, and perception about migrant women in care and domestic work. So just leaving their husband behind and being a migrant or the primary migrant and working here and becoming the primary breadwinner, they definitely challenge and again dismantle the patriarchal traditional gender roles and gender relations in Nepal. And so women also selflessly and significantly contributed to family, local community, and transnational community here in America and also back home. And women from network that help them to build a diasporic community, become engaged in transnational activism and global civic citizenship, and they achieve empowerment. Actually, Anita, when I asked her about women's agencies and activism, she did, tell me that the, empowerment lies, just to quote her, empowerment lies within us. We don't need to seek empowerment outside because it is within us, referring to women. And then women also build a forum to learn and share information about global engagement, civic responsibility, workplace right, human rights. During the time of my, the research, there was a big discussion about the domestic workers' right in New York, and some of these women were aware of that. Although many of these women were, undocumented worker, they were actually approaching organizations like Adhikar. Adhikar is the NGO based in New York, and Adhikar also, that time was working very closely with the United Domestic, Workers Alliances. So although these women didn't have their, the working papers, they were very much conscientious and they were very much active, or they were sort of navigating their, way to achieve their, workplace right or workers' right. And the broader impacts, as many of the quotes already reflected. So Nepali women were the agent of transformational social change, and their social, cultural, political, and economic activities transcends national and international boundaries. That was very consistent in most of the narratives. So their common experiences, there is womenhood, their motherhood, their migration history, and their transnational work life and activism actually brought these women together in a single forum. And this is one of the quotes shared by Anita again, and I quote her: "We can achieve empowerment through women's agencies and activism. If we organize and mobilize our strength and visions, we can accomplish any missions on any level." And I quote her. So you can see that women experience and broadly achieve empowerment through their leadership, agency, and commitment to make a difference for their family and community in transnational context. Is that how women's empowerment, agency, and activism lead to social, political, and economic transformations, and also and then that led to women's, NGOs and community-based participations in transnational global citizenship. Thank you. I